Hello, this is the Libertarian Dilettante, but for this series I'll just be an airline dilettante. So I'm playing airlineclub.com, which is a free-to-play web-based game, and I'm really enjoying it. It's pretty sophisticated. I especially like that it deals with passenger transfers. So I will be starting a new game, but I thought I would just start out by showing off what I have already so that I can illustrate a couple of the features of the game. Before I get into that, though, I'd just like to thank Patson, the creator of this game. You'll find him on the forums and also in the chat, which is available here. His airline is Air Canada, and I think he also has a second airline, Air Koryo. So if you have any questions or anything, he is definitely the best one to ask, but a lot of people are very helpful in the chat, and I've learned quite a bit just by posting a question, and there's usually someone online who knows the answer. So let me start out by just kind of describing the world that we find ourselves in. There are none of the major airlines exist. There's no Delta or United or anything like that. All of the airlines in the game are controlled by players, or at least I'm pretty sure that's all of them. There might be a few sort of legacy placeholder type airlines, but all of the ones that really matter are controlled by players. And the game has some sort of artificial constraints that make it hard for any one airline to totally dominate the globe. So there's a lot of room for new players to start up somewhere kind of obscure and make their way. Which is nice because it means that even though the game has been going for quite a while and some of the airlines are very large, you don't need to worry about them necessarily because there's still lots of room for growth within the world. All right, so to take a quick look at my network, my headquarters is in Salt Lake City, which might not have been an ideal choice for reasons I'll explain later. I have a hub in El Paso, one in Philadelphia, one in Norfolk, and one in Cologne, Germany. And my basic strategy has been to focus on routes that don't have any direct competition. So that lets me maintain fairly high profit margins. As I get bigger, I set my sights on larger cities, and so I move into competition with other airlines, but only once I kind of feel ready to do that. Now, one thing you may notice is that I don't have any hub on the West Coast, and I don't even have all that many flights going to the West Coast. And the reason for that is because I'm a member of an alliance, and a couple of the people in my alliance are based on the West Coast. So I sort of rely on them to put that aspect of my network in place. So they help to send passengers to Salt Lake and El Paso, and then they continue on from there. And as a result, I don't really need to be as active on the West Coast. Okay, there are a couple features I would like to show off specifically before starting a new game, and it's much easier to demonstrate them with an existing airline, which is the main reason why I'm starting out like this. One of them that I like quite a bit is if we look at this route in particular, I can just click on it and it pulls up this information, which is pretty useful. This is Salt Lake to San Francisco. Now, it's not my most profitable route. I keep my rates fairly low. And incidentally, I keep rates fairly low on like this flight to Sacramento as well. You can see I actually have some empty seats, but I like to keep capacity high because one of my allies is based here. So that's sort of, it just kind of contributes to the overall network. But I want to take a closer look at Salt Lake to San Francisco. I don't have any allies based here, but I do want to pull in passengers from a large West Coast city. And the feature I want to show off is the passenger map. Oh, but before I do, I guess since we're looking right at it, this is pretty handy too. It shows all of the airlines that have a direct flight from San Francisco to Salt Lake City. And you can see I'm Sky Chariot, and you can see my prices are fairly moderate. I guess actually they're on the higher end. My quality is the lowest of any of these. Nevertheless, I tend to fill up the plane because there just there aren't enough flights, apparently, between these two cities. And so until that starts to happen, I'm just going to continue making money and offering fairly poor service because that's the most profitable thing for me to do. But the other reason this isn't my most profitable route by any means. The main reason I like it is because this is showing a map of where people are coming from and going to. All flights in this game are treated as round trip, so the direction of the arrow doesn't actually matter that much. These people could be coming from San Francisco to Salt Lake or vice versa. But this shows all the connecting flights that people are participating in. So you can see, for example, there are 45 passengers coming from New Orleans to Salt Lake to San Francisco, or vice versa. And they may or may not be continuing on. Now, right now, I'm only looking at my allies. And so, like, this flight to China is one of my allies who flies into San Francisco. This flight from Boise is one of my allies. But in addition, people can transfer to other flights. And you can see there are quite a few different options here. All of these different options help me out because they give people a reason to make this initial flight. You know, they might not want to go from Salt Lake to San Francisco. They actually want to go from Salt Lake to Brisbane or Honolulu. But they're taking my flight to get part of the way, and then they transfer. So this is a pretty neat feature, and it can be pretty useful in analyzing your network and determining which of your routes are important to the overall scheme of things. I can also turn off that animation if it's bothering you, or if you don't have the processing power to deal with it or something, or the internet connection, I guess. So that's one thing I wanted to take a look at. And then there's another feature called the search function that can be pretty useful, and it's just kind of neat. So I was talking about New Orleans to San Francisco. Let's just do a quick search there. And we find that there's an airline in the game that's offering a direct flight for $604. So that's quite a bit more competitive than my option, but nevertheless, some people seem to be choosing my airline and flying through Salt Lake City in order to get from New Orleans to San Francisco. Now, I'm not totally sure why people are doing that rather than taking the direct flight. There were 45 of them, as you may recall. Some of them, it might be because they're continuing on and they're going through one of my allies, because they're more likely to choose my airline if my ally offers a connecting flight that they want. So in any case, you can see that there really isn't a very good option after that. Some of these might be business class, and that's why they're more expensive. Like this is, for example, business. All right, while I'm here, I'm also going to show off Fargo, North Dakota to San Francisco. And you can see here I am again. This is a one stop, and apparently I have the best seller despite someone else being slightly cheaper. It's probably because I have a shorter layover, and so people are willing to pay that extra bit of money. At one time, I had quite a few flights to cities like Fargo and Bismarck and places like that. I still fly to Sioux Falls. That was really helpful because these people don't have a lot of options. So once I get them to fly in, they're more likely not only to take my airline in the first place because I'm the only one offering this flight, but they're more likely to continue on and buy another ticket from me, basically, to get to one of the other places that it would make sense, like El Paso and possibly even further on from there. So I think a lot of people, a lot of new players look at the direct demand here, which is 40, and they think, okay, there are going to be 40 people who want to fly from Fargo to Salt Lake. That's what that's telling us. But those are only the people who only want to fly directly from, where was I? Fargo to Salt Lake. Anyone who wants to continue on to somewhere else from Fargo to one of these other places, not only within my network, but within anyone's network who flies out of Salt Lake, any of them might be willing to take this flight, because as far as I know, it's the only one offered. In fact, I can check that pretty quickly. Oh, no, it's no longer the only one offered, but for a long time it was. So even though this person is flying 350 people to Salt Lake, and I'm flying 210 at full capacity, between us, we have over 500 people flying from Fargo to Salt Lake, even though there's only direct demand for 40. And that's one of the things I really like about this game, is it has that dynamic demand model that includes connecting flights. So it's really a lot more sophisticated than other airline simulators that I've seen. Okay, I was going to mention a few of the things you can do with this search function, ways you can use it effectively. One is to see if there's indirect competition. So if I want to open a new route from point A to point B, I can do a search and see what the current best options are available, because it could be that someone is offering a flight with one stop that's pretty cheap. And so if that's true, then it's not as good of an option for me. Another thing you can do is you can check on a route if you don't have a base there. From any of my bases, I can just click on another airport and plan a flight. And now it's telling me Salt Lake City to Billings. I can see what my competitors are doing and decide if that's a route that I want to open. But let's say I'm considering opening a hub in Edmonton, and I want to know what things look like flying out of Edmonton. So from Edmonton to Toronto, I can just check on that and see basically how much competition there is on that particular route. And there are a couple other things. I don't know that I'll get into them. You can analyze routes to kind of size them up for a price war. Okay, so I think I'm done taking a look at this. Oh, one more thing I guess I'll point out is I do a lot of kind of point-to-point type flying, so a lot of my my routes crisscross back and forth. But there are different ways to play the game. You can use more of a traditional hub and spoke system. I prefer this kind of a setup because I like to use my precious slots on fairly long flights. I don't like a lot of short flights feeding into a hub because they take up too many of my slots. Anyway, with that, I'm going to now begin a brand new game so that you can see what that looks like. So I'm currently in the process of signing in. I've given them my email address and a password and so on just above here. And my airline is going to be called Ascendant Airways. There are 3 options here. I recommend the last one. This just gives you nothing but cash, but I prefer it because when you start out, you don't have very many slots, and so it's not especially easy to find. I didn't try this one actually, but here you have a whole bunch of planes, and you can't really use them right away. So I didn't like that particular setup very much. I felt like I needed to start making a lot of money right away to handle this debt, and I was saddled with all these planes that I couldn't be using right away. So I'm going to choose this option that gives me the most freedom to start with, and I will go ahead and sign up on a new account. Okay, so the first thing I need to do is select a location for my headquarters. And all of your other bases that you open later on, you can close down and open somewhere else if you choose. But once you pick your headquarters, you're kind of stuck with it. So it's important to make a good choice. Now, in my first airline, I chose Salt Lake City as my headquarters because I figured if it works for Delta, it should work for me. But there are a couple problems with it. One is that the population is not especially large. And in this game, US cities tend to be a little smaller than they are in real life. The other problem with Salt Lake is that the airport scale is size 7, which is pretty big, and that means it's more expensive to expand that hub. Now you get more slots available from your headquarters than anywhere else. So I want to choose a city with a lot of potential that can really take advantage of that. Now if we look at some major US cities like Seattle, the home of Boeing, we see in the game it actually doesn't have 1 million people. And actually there are only 2 cities, or rather airports, in the US that have more than 3 million people. One of them, of course, is JFK with 5 million. So this is a very substantial city, and it has these bonuses that bring in more people. And the other is LAX at 4 million. Not quite as big a bonuses, but still very substantial. But a lot of these other airports don't have as many people as you might suspect. And so the United States is a good place to start, I think, because there are just so many options, and especially if you're looking for medium-sized cities, and especially if you're looking for medium-sized cities that are far apart so you can charge more, the US is a really good place to begin, I think. But just for fun, I'm going to move over to Europe, where there are more large cities, and because I just haven't played here quite as much. So I'm looking for a really world-class airport for my headquarters. Now, my first thought, of course, would be London Heathrow. So that's London Gatwick. Let's take a look at London Heathrow. Looks outstanding, right? 9.4 million people, huge bonuses. The problem with this, however, if we view the airport, is that other people had the same idea. These are all airlines that have a hub at London Heathrow. And you can see some of them are very large. So if we go back and we look at the airport details, we see that it has connecting flights to 348 different airports. I want to find an airport that has a lot fewer airports connected so that I can find routes that don't have any competition. So I'm not going to choose London Heathrow because it's just too competitive. Now I could take a look at, where is this, London Gatwick, and we see 164 connected airports. So that's quite a bit better. Nevertheless, there are quite a few airlines based here. Another thing I want to keep in mind is I'm looking for somewhere that's kind of on the edge of a continent, because you only have a limited number of intercontinental flights. So a lot of my flights are going to be within Europe, and I don't want them to be really short. Like London to Paris is just not going to make me as much money because people will only pay so much to travel such a short distance, whereas London to Rome is more promising, and London to Kiev, I could charge still more for that flight. So I was thinking about maybe Madrid. I like this because it has a really large population. The average income level is still pretty high. 42 is pretty good. If we view the airport, one thing that has me a little concerned is Air Koryo just came in and set up shop. So that was fairly recent after I had been looking at Madrid. Nevertheless, it's probably a pretty good choice. I think the single most important statistic, though, is this number of connected airports, 224. Again, because I'm looking for routes that don't have direct competition. Now, another one that I was looking at is here, Istanbul. And the reason I like this is because it has an enormous population that it covers, and only 189 connected airports, which I think is acceptable. Now, I can actually get a little bit more information by clicking on the airport, and instead of viewing the airport details, I'm going to view the flight map. And this will show me all of the routes connecting Istanbul with another city. So here they are. And even though Istanbul is considered in Europe, you can still fly here without using up your precious intercontinental slots if it's close enough. So these nearby cities in Turkey, although they're in Asia, don't count as intercontinental. So you can see that some of them have still been left open. And that's important to me because I want to be able to have flights going in all directions so that people can connect in different ways through my headquarters. There might not be a ton of people on these flights, but that doesn't matter so much initially because I just won't have big enough planes for that to matter. I'm starting out really small. I only have $50 million. The thing that's most appealing about Istanbul to me, besides its large population, is that it's in this sort of far southeastern corner of Europe. So I can have long flights that connect to these big cities in the wealthy western part of Europe. Now, of course, there's going to be competition for the bigger cities, so I'm not going to choose them right away. But there are lots of smaller airports here that I can choose from and connect back to Istanbul. And the reason I think this is especially promising is because Istanbul has a bonus to tourism. It's a vacation hub. And that's especially appealing to people in wealthy countries, such as the UK or Denmark, places like that. So I think I'm going to be able to get a fair amount of traffic from Western Europe to Istanbul. And then maybe I don't have quite as much promise going to the east because I can only reach so far before it uses up my intercontinental routes. But I'm going to be okay with that. Now there's another city that I want to point out, and maybe this is actually a better choice. I haven't looked at it in a while. We'll see if it still looks good. I like Naples quite a bit. 3 million people. The average income level is pretty high, 44. Oh, let's just check quickly what the average income level is here. 31, so quite a bit lower, but on the other hand, 10 million people, 10.6 million, is just so many that I think I'll be okay. And furthermore, with that vacation bonus, I think we'll get enough passengers from Western Europe that this is going to work out just fine. Now coming back to Naples, wait, that's Rome. If we view the airport, we see connected airports, only 128, so that's a bit lower. And in particular, there aren't very many airlines with a headquarters here. So I'm thinking that one of my early priorities is going to be to establish my own base in Naples. And I haven't mentioned it much lately. The airport scale is one of my main considerations because I need some place that I can upgrade without having to spend too much money. And the upgrade cost depends on the airport scale. So a scale of 3 is very small for a city of this size, and that's why Naples is so appealing to me. By contrast, Istanbul if I can get back there. Let me just close this out so that I can use the grab tool more easily. Istanbul has a huge airport scale, so it's going to be very expensive for me to upgrade. However, I'm really thinking long term because, again, I can't ever move my headquarters, and I want a city with the most potential possible. So I'm going to go ahead and establish my headquarters here. You can see there is quite a bit of competition, but I think I can avoid it for the most part for now. All right, so I build my headquarters. I'll go ahead and confirm that. And now I'm going to be looking for flights to open. So the first thing I probably need to do is buy a plane. The plane that I like best to start out with, and I know a lot of other people do as well, is this Embraer 120 Brasilia. This is actually a propeller-driven plane. It has 30 seats. It's quite fuel efficient. It has fairly poor range, but it's just very cheap. So it's a good way to get started. And these small planes are delivered immediately. So I will go ahead and purchase one of these and start looking for routes that I want to open. Now, my basic procedure is to take a look at the flight map and try to find some place that doesn't have service. Preferably a large city. Of course, it has to be within range. I'm not sure how far my one plane can reach. So I might put a cut in here after doing some searching, but I'll just kind of demonstrate, okay, this has 113,000. I'll go ahead and plan a flight. Wow, I cannot pronounce that. You can see I'm just confirming there is no competition currently, and it's a little bit too far, so that won't work. That won't work for me. I want to stick with shorter flights because I don't want to spend as much on my plane. Let's check Innsbruck. Oh, this is nice. So there's no competition. And we see that it has direct demand of 100 people. So that's probably a pretty good place to start. I could look around and try to find someplace better. But really this looks okay. I'll keep it in mind. And I actually keep pencil and paper and just jot down. So Innsbruck, 100 for the 100 direct demand. And I'm going to take a look around and I'll get back to you. Okay, so I've taken a look around the map and I've found a few cities that are definitely going to work. They may not be the total optimal list, but I'm pretty confident that I'm going to be able to make decent profits here. So one that I really like is Genoa. It has nearly 1 million people. When I go to plan my flight, it has over 300 direct demand for economy passengers. So I will go ahead and use my plane. I have 5 slots available here, and I will take all 5 of them. And I'm not going to worry about my service quality because there's no direct competition, so I think I'm going to be just fine on that. And I'm going to leave the price at the default price because I want to establish my awareness and loyalty in this new airport and actually in my own airport. So maybe I could be making higher profits, but you win loyalty faster if you keep your prices low. So I'm just going to leave the default price. And I forgot to check how much that cost to establish, but it's not particularly cheap to establish a new route, especially this early in the game. You kind of feel it. Now I mentioned I want to put a hub in Florence. So even though there's competition, where is Florence? South of Rome. Or, I'm sorry, not Florence, Naples. Even though there's competition here, I'm going to open up the route anyway. It's going to cost me a fair bit of money. If I look at my competitors' prices, apparently these people are selling tickets at fairly high prices. So I think I'm going to be okay. Now, I think I want to build up Naples fairly quickly. I'll put 3 flights on this. Really, the setup cost is my biggest commitment. So I'll go ahead and create that. And then I mentioned Florence. That's another decent-sized city that doesn't look like it has much competition, or any competition, from a direct source. So I'm going to just buy another one of these planes, which I can do just like that. Okay, back to Florence. And I'll use all 5 of my available slots. Well, actually, there's only 88 direct demand, isn't there? And I'm up to 90. So there are probably people in Florence who want to take connecting flights, and even though I don't offer very many, there are a lot of other airlines that do. So I'm safe going over that amount, but I'm actually just going to leave it at 3 for now. So I will go ahead and create that. I have 9 flights left. Now all of my flights currently are headed west. And I want to offer people some flights continuing on to the east. So I took a look here in Turkey. Now if I try to go too far out, as I was saying before, I don't know if this is too far out, but no, this is, oh, because it's domestic, it doesn't count as intercontinental. Okay, but let me just take a quick look at Armenia. You can see I cannot create an intercontinental route just yet. So that's not a possibility. I didn't actually think to look at all of these, but I've got some decent options. I think this was one of them, and there's one that starts with a K, that one. I probably want to take one that's farther out, like this. So Elzig has 243 direct demand. That's quite a bit. I have a total of 7 slots available here, but I want to think about how I'm going to use these remaining 9. I think I'm going to split them 5 and 4. So that's 5 going that way, and maybe I want a flight going north. Where was, actually, where's Austria? Up here. That's sort of more west. I can't imagine people from Italy are going to want to fly to Istanbul and then back up this way. They're much more likely to want to fly to another city in Turkey via Istanbul. So let's grab this one. Oh, and it's very cheap to set up too. That's nice. Okay, there's only 124 direct demand here. So there's not quite as much long-term potential, but I'm not going to worry about that for now. And I'm only sinking $50,000 into establishing this route, so I'm not very worried about it at all. Okay, I take my plane. 4 flights. Now I can't use this plane to its full potential because I've already maxed out Istanbul. But I'll be getting more slots out of Istanbul over time. That's really the only thing you can do at this point, is just wait until some time passes and you're given more slots at the airport. Now, just for fun, let's see if I can create another base. I doubt it. No, it's going to cost me $3.7 million, which I certainly have available. And I'm going to need to increase my reputation, which again is going to happen naturally over time as I just fly more passengers around. I left quite a bit of money available. I could have started out with a bigger plane, and that's probably optimal, to be honest. I think if I went with a bigger plane, I would have gotten away with it just fine. But I really want to start out cautiously, especially since I'm flying out of a big airport. I just feel like this way is safer. So initially, I didn't spend very much of my money. I can afford to coast for a long time, and I can afford to change up my routes if I need to. Like, it's always possible that someone flying from either Istanbul or from Genoa is going to open up a competing route, and then I'll have to change that one. So because I don't have very many routes open yet, I'm not very diversified, and I'm going to keep a lot of money in the bank just in case something should happen that I need it. As I said, I could probably get away with using a bigger plane. The next plane that I intend to start using is this Embraer 140, which is about 50% larger and costs almost twice as much. So if you feel confident about your plan and you're just starting out, it's totally fine to start using these right away or something like that. All right, so that's about all I can do for now. The turns last anywhere from an hour and a half to 2 hours, just depending on how long it takes the server to process. And my plan is, I don't intend to play this game constantly. I'm not going to be sitting at my computer waiting, every 90 minutes to come back and adjust my airline. I'm basically just going to walk away from it and come back tomorrow. Now, I do manage my other airline a little more closely, but just to give you an idea of what it's like to play this game, I'm going to not keep as close of an eye on this one. And my plan instead is to just demonstrate how you can create a successful airline without spending too much time on it per day and just coming back to it occasionally. Maybe I'll step in a little more often early on. I'm not quite sure yet. But for now, all I need to do is wait. I guess I'll take a quick look at the routes I've established: 3 to Italy, 2 to Turkey. And I'm pretty sure that at least 3 or 4 of these are going to be turning a decent profit, and I'll be well on my way. All right, so if you've enjoyed this video, go ahead and give it a like, and that will help other people to find it. Again, I think this game, Airline Club, is really good. It's much better than the other airline simulations that I've played. So once again, I would like to thank the creator, who goes by Patson in the forums, and Air Canada in the game. In fact, if I open chat really quickly, he also, Air Koryo is his airline, the one that's based in Madrid now. So he's on here quite a bit and is really great about supporting this game. And just for reference, he also has a big hub here in Istanbul. So I think Air Koryo is going to be my arch rival, even though he's 100 times my size. All right, well, that's all for now. I'll see you in the next episode.